Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Skytear Horde. Skytear Horde is brought to you by Skytear Games. It's for 1 to 3 players, ages 10 and up, and games generally run about 30 minutes. An arcane and unknown power has taken over the world of Skytear, controlling hordes of monsters led by its dreadful elementals known as Outsiders. Legendary heroes from all the realms have set aside their rivalries and forged an alliance to repel this common threat once and for all. Skytear Horde is a castle defense cooperative card battler. On your turn, you deploy allies and towers on the 6 lanes of the battlefield to stop waves of monsters from destroying your castle. Just defending will not be enough to win though. Some of your allies must counterattack and tear down the gates that are spawning the horde. Once the gates are destroyed, the huge outsider elemental will arrive on the battlefield for the final confrontation. Destroy it to claim victory over the horde. Skytear Horde is a game inspired by tower defense video games and card battlers like Hearthstone or Keyforge. Waves of monsters will siege your castle, all the while a sea of minions will pillage your resources. You lose if your castle is destroyed or if your deck runs out of cards. On the other hand, to win it will not be enough just to survive the horde. You will have to find the resources to leave the castle and tear down the gates that are spawning these waves and waves of monsters. Alright, so first and foremost, everything again you're seeing is prototype. This board is just a representation of what the playmat is probably going to look like and so forth. But let's first dive into the different types of cards. You have several decks that you can tap into for the heroes. In my case, they gave me the blue, the green, and the red to play with, and I really like the blue deck. It's my favorite. But the different card types here is that you have allies that you're going to be attacking with. You have hero allies, which are super powerful and so forth. All of these cards are going to have various abilities, all clearly printed at the bottom, very clear text on how they work. And then you've got tower cards. Tower cards are going to be fixed in a lane once you place them, unlike allies who can move around the battlefield. And you've got attachments like weapons and things you can put on the allies, as well as spells. Spells are going to be one-time use. They get discarded, but they are powerful and you will want to tap into them frequently. Now, the stats on these cards, you're going to have to spend mana to put them into play, into the different lanes. And each of the cards will have health and different abilities and things that attack abilities, things like that. So keep those in mind as you're deploying them to the battlefield. Then on the horde side of the board, we have the undead that we're playing with here and the outsider, which is the boss that you're going to have to eventually fight after you've destroyed all the gates. Now, the boss is so large that it takes up 2 lanes. 2 cards come together to form the boss. Really cool way this game comes to an end. Now, you have several cards in the deck, and just like with heroes, they all have their own abilities and actions they perform, just like what you're doing, with the exception of minions. Minions are not in the lanes for you to battle until you pull them down to engage with them, and when you do, they become monsters, which is crucial. I'll tell you why in a minute. Now, the thing is, if left unchecked, they are going to wreak havoc on you, because however many tokens are on the different minion cards are going to wipe out your resources. Resources in this game are your cards, your deck of cards. They will go and pillage, wiping out that many cards for every token that they have in play. So you have to manage this. It becomes high pressure at times. The minions can really overrun you if you don't keep them in check. And then, like I said, all the other monsters in the deck have various abilities, and you have the same kind of cards. You've got standard horde monsters, you've got elite monsters, and of course they have spells that they can put out into play against you. And then they also have some skeletons, which are kind of throwaway monsters, but they really wreak havoc on your forces. But the big thing here is the gates. So depending on the level of difficulty you wish to play will determine which 3 gates you're going to be putting into play. Now, through the course of every round, these gates are going to rotate, and based on the position of the gate will determine how many monsters come out into the lanes. So you have to balance this with the minions, you've got to go after the gates, all kinds of things. Now, when you're engaged with a monster, you have to fight that monster. But if you're in a lane without any monsters, then you're going to be attacking the gate. And much like that they are going to be going after your castle. Now in both cases, with the gate and the castle here, I have used dice to track health. But your castle will have special abilities, and they're going after your castle trying to crush it and defeat you or wipe out all your resources. So you'll have to keep an eye on that. Lots of fun things to manage in this game as you move through and battle against the onslaught of hordes that are trying to crush you. And let's talk mana. Mana is key to getting your cards out into the battlefield. Now, the gate will show what your starting mana value is for the round. Now, mana will also carry over from round to round, so you might want to save it up for a big deploy. But you have cards and other ways that you can gain mana throughout, even from the monsters and from cards that you deployed and so forth. So keep that in mind, but you build up that mana, deploy your cards, battle it out, and that's really the key. Now, one of the neat things here is that you don't just draw cards on your next round or turn. So at the start of the game, you're gonna get 5 cards, and you can deploy these however you need to, and you can even mulligan at the start of the game. They suggest you do so, just so you can start with a hand of allies. But the thing here is that you don't get more cards until you defeat monsters. So every monster you defeat, you get a new card, which is why it's important when you move a minion down into the lane, they become monsters. So that is really an interesting part of the game for sure, because that's the only way for you to get more resources is by destroying and defeating monsters. Now there's several steps in a round, but we're going to take a brief look here, and they have a handy reference card to lead you through the rounds, which is really handy. But really, the beginning phase is all about collecting mana, and then you're moving to the horde phase. You're going to deploy and get ready for battle. Then you're doing your alliance phase, and remember, allies can move around the board. You're going to be deploying cards and so forth. And then you have the treachery phase, and this is the one thing I want to call out. I really like this aspect of the game. You will be drawing a horde card, and on the horde card, it may have a treachery, or it may just have swords. If there's a treachery, it's an ability, it'll get used. This card just goes to the top of the deck. It doesn't go out to the lane. You use the extra attack ability if that's what you drew from a sword. It'll be on the left or the right, and that'll determine which card gets that special ability for more attack. Or it'll have a treachery ability. The treachery can cause players to have to discard cards, things like that. So I really like this little aspect. It's pretty interesting for sure. And then you have a fight phase, and you're going to be battling back and forth, probably mutual destruction at times. You hope maybe you have some healing and things in place to help protect you, but it is about removing monsters and getting more cards into your hand, absolutely. And then you have the pillage phase, where if you haven't dealt with these minions, they're going to go and remove cards from your deck and move them to the pillage pile. You'll never get to even see what these were. They go face down. So that's why you manage these very carefully, and the more tokens on a minion card will determine its strength. So again, you have to keep those guys in check. And then you just have an ending phase, cleanup, and so forth. So that's kind of the basics of gameplay. And really, you know, the neat thing here is that there's several different types of hero decks and things you can tap into. I like the back and forth. I like how you manage resources. It's really interesting how they've done that. It really plays well. And if you're familiar with CCGs, games like that, this is going to be very familiar to you as well. But I like that you have this resource management they have to deal with. You have to deal with the gates and protect your castle. Castle is very important and so forth. And the different castles have different abilities. You only have one in play. It's not multiple like there are multiple gates. So you choose one for that particular game. And then you can, you know, down the road as you play more and more, you could potentially even create your own decks for your own heroes and so forth. But ultimately your goal is to crush the horde, defeat the boss, or in the end, they might crush you, defeat your castle, or wipe out all your resources. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview. Everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, I really like the fact that these minions, you have to keep them in check. They can overrun you, and the pressure you feel from that, and you have to really deal with them every round because they are going to wipe out your cards. So I like that aspect of the game. I like that you don't really draw cards until you defeat and deal with monsters. That adds a whole nice element there as well. But, you know, again, like I said, if you're familiar with CCGs or MOBAs, this is going to have a lot of feels that you recognize and are familiar with for sure. And of course, all the different heroes and their abilities, so many different things to tap into and combos that you can come up with. I like how you can attach weapons. things like that. Only the red deck, I think, has that for the prototype that I received, and not all of those have full fleshed out artwork yet, but I like that aspect. I played with all three, the green, the red, and the blue, but I definitely like this blue deck. I like the artwork. It's really, really interesting for sure. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.